Welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Ray Descalzo from Privada Wealth Management. In this podcast, we help you overcome financial worries and make sense of planning, investing, insurance, and banking. Join us for this journey as Ray draws from his expertise and interviews brilliant minds to help you enjoy life. The best is yet to come.
Hello and welcome to Return on Lifestyle with Ray Descalzo from Privada Wealth Management. Ray has talked in the past on past podcasts about the fact that financial peace is not necessarily something that you can get to. This is more of a war. We want you to have peace in your future, in your financial future, but really this is a war. And so he wants you to win the financial war. And today specifically, we're going to start a 4-part series on financial landmines. Let's get into this. Ray, how are you today?
Eric, I am on a war footing. I'm excited to be here and thankful to have you here with me.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this. So this is part 1 of a 4-part series about financial landmines. I can think of lots of landmines, disasters, natural disasters, different things that happen. But what specifically are you talking about when you say landmines?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, the big picture is we want to make sure that we change the paradigm. Mm-hmm. You've been told that, we're going to achieve financial peace. What I want to tell you, I want to confirm your suspicions that you're constantly having to be vigilant. All right. There is a financial war going on. And like you said, there's lots of financial landmines. And that financial war is actually the very nature of capitalism itself. What I mean by that is, when you look at capitalism is fantastic. It has brought prosperity like no other system in the history of mankind. All right. So I'm not bashing capitalism, mm-hmm. but I want you to look at it from a different point of view. Have you ever gone to a straw market in a developing country? Like, for instance, if you go on a cruise, they drop you off in the Bahamas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when they drop you off, as soon as you get off the boat in the Bahamas, what do you see as you're getting off the boat?
Well, I haven't been to Bahamas, but I was down in Paraguay, and there was a huge open market with tons of different things, and everybody's ready to negotiate with you.
There you go. You just said the word. So first of all, Paraguay, that's very cool. A whole nother story I want to hear about mm-hmm. on a later podcast because I've never been to Paraguay, and I just think it's cool. But at any rate, when you get there, right, you've got all of these vendors, and all of these vendors are trying to negotiate. That negotiation is a war, right? In other words, They want the highest price, and you want the what?
Lowest.
Exactly, the lowest price. And it's kind of fun. And it's great because having that negotiation is much better than the old ways where we're just going to be Vikings and take it, So it's definitely a step up. I would even say a step up from the straw market vendor would be maybe Amazon Prime, where I know the going price and mm-hmm. is constantly being decided upon and pressed down by competition. But that's the nature of capitalism. Yeah. Another good example of this is, let me ask you, have you ever had to ask for a raise?
Oh, Lord, Ray. Yeah, and it just brings flashbacks of a very difficult conversation that I walked away from feeling the most sick I've ever felt. So thanks for bringing up that memory. Appreciate it.
Yeah. On a high note. Yeah, exactly. Sorry to bring it down. In fact, everybody listening to this as they're driving to work right now are rolling their eyes because that's maybe the day they were going to ask for a raise. It is a bit of a battle. Yeah. It's a negotiation. It mm-hmm. is this tug and this pull of risk and reward. And it's funny because in financial planning, it's also in investing, it's true, because if you ever bought or sold a stock, you got to think about that for a second. When somebody has a stock and they say, I'm going to sell this stock, what are they thinking? They're thinking, this stock is not worth keeping. This stock is going to go down. This stock no longer serves my purpose. Mm-hmm. It's my what? It's my trash.
Yeah.
And there's a saying, one man's trash is another man's
treasure.
Exactly. And so you're the guy, you go there and you say, I'm going to buy that. Remember, every time you buy something, and in this particular case of stock, you're getting it from somebody who thinks it's not worth any more mm-hmm. than what you just paid for it. And that should make us kind of suspicious. So there are a lot of things out there in the capitalistic system that are landmines. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about the different types of landmines that you need to be aware of.
All right. Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, let's start with the primary landmine. The biggest, I say primary landmine because it's the first one we have to deal with. And that primary landmine is actually, well, let me ask you what you might think it might be. If I made a list, inverted yield curve, Democrats or Republicans in office, the Federal Reserve raising rates, lowering rates, printing money, whatever they do, no one quite knows, natural disasters, or your brain. What are the top landmines, the primary landmine of all those things I just mentioned?
Oh, well, I'm definitely going to lead with my brain, just because, again, you have certain ideas and expectations that may or may not be met, and that can cause a lot of hesitation, or it can cause you to act too quickly. I remember my wife and I, we leased a minivan. We thought it was a fantastic idea at the time, and we didn't take somebody with us that was a neutral party or wasn't emotionally invested, and we got took, as they say. It was a bad financial decision, and that was all our brains. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with brains.
Yeah, good. Winner, chicken dinner. That's the right answer. Now, what sells is if I tell you about the Federal Reserve or natural disaster or the inverted yield curve. In other words, that's what you come to your financial planner to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Those are important things, the presidential cycle and politics and so forth. Those are all pressing, urgent and headline grabbing. What's not headline grabbing is when you go to the car dealership and they get that new car smell, man. That new car smell, it should be illegal. It's like a drug. It's hypnotic.
It had 3 TVs, Ray. It had 3 TVs built in. It had swivel seats. It had a table that you could put up in the back. And it also had a price tag of $630 a month on a lease.
Man,
I'm ashamed.
You're singing my song. You're singing to the choir. I love a new car. I love new car smell. I love gadgets. And I know that about myself, and you know that about yourself. And so the primarist, I shouldn't say biggest. I want to keep coming back to it. The primary landmine, or as I was trying to say, the primary-ist. The primary landmine is you.
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of a quote. It was, "Know thyself is the beginning of all wisdom." The guy's name was Socrates. Haven't heard him before. Maybe
pretty
you
smart
have.
guy. I've heard he's pretty smart. Yeah.
Right. I like to call him Socrates when I'm at a dinner party, and then people are like, "Oh boy, this guy." Anyways, the point is he makes a good point. Know yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But I also like it from a war footing, like we were talking about. I like what Sun Tzu says in his book, The Art of War, and he was actually quoting another proverb that's been lost to time. He said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." And I would add to that sometimes knowing yourself and knowing your enemy are the same thing. In our future podcasts and episodes, we will talk about other financial landmines that are outside yourself. But what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about some of the problems inside your brain, some of the landmines that you've created for yourself that you got to watch out for.
Okay, so in this scenario, besides me and my brain, and I guess what would contribute to my brain being the enemy, what is the main not enema, Ray, it's definitely different. What is the main enemy that I am facing that really screws up with my brain?
The main enemy that I believe leads to every other problem that we'll discuss here is consumerism. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So in this situation, what would you define as consumerism besides like a really bad minivan lease?
Great question. Well, your story very vividly. I mean, I can smell a new car smell when you said it. Consumerism is when you have this sense of need of what's new and bright and shiny. I look at it kind of like my daughter's toys. My daughter will sit there and see another kid's toys and say, "Hey, I need that particular toy." She gets that toy, goes to school, and comes back and said, "Oh no, I need the newest toy." Much like we say to ourselves, "I need a minivan, not with one TV, not with 2 TVs, but yes, yea, verily, 3 TVs.
Yeah. Just in case I need to watch while I'm driving. No, I didn't even get to use the TVs. I always drove. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. And the reason it's important to talk about is because consumerism is I don't even know what I want to call it, almost like a tumor on capitalism. It is something that has developed where we are constantly barraged with an easy expenditure of new funds to get something new. And so, like my daughter, we become very immature, always kind of unsatisfied with what we have. and reaching for what is next. And it's really, again, it's like a drug from the dark side of prosperity. I cannot complain a bit about my newest smartphone. It is absolutely amazing. But you know what? Life was pretty good 10 years ago when I had a flip phone. And life was pretty good 20, 30 years ago when I got my first, cell phone, and it was $30 for 30 minutes.
I don't know if life was good then, if we had paid $1 a minute. No,
all right, yeah,
but I get what your
life was
point is. Yeah.
Right. Life was pretty bad back then. But the point is progress is this beautiful thing. But instead of necessity being the mother of invention, what we have is this inverted pyramid where invention is the mother of necessity. And that drives us, and it can have some side effects.
So you're saying I should not get that new Husqvarna automatic lawnmower that I was reading about last night. I mean, this thing, by the way, it's amazing. It does almost a half an acre, and it mows your lawn every day, so your lawn always looks the same, and it doesn't bag anything. So you're saying,
is it like the Zumba where it does it by itself and just kind of wanders around like with a computer?
Exactly, but you don't have to empty it like one of those little vacuum things. It literally shaves off a micromillimeter, whatever it is, off of your lawn, and so it just falls into the lawn and just gets absorbed immediately. So you never have to bag, you never have to rake, and it's only $2,000, Ray.
If you act now, and you get a free set of steak knives probably too, right?
No, you have to also pay for them to come out and install the boundary around your yard, and they didn't even tell me how much that was. Anyway, you made a good point that some of these things have side effects, and it kind of sounds like you're talking about a drug in a way. And Nancy Reagan, I'm old school here, she was all about say no to drugs. That was her big campaign, and because drugs obviously hurt you. So how does consumerism hurt you, since it is kind of like a drug, and that Husqvarna is calling to me?
Yeah, great question. Why it hurts you is because we only have a limited amount of time, talent, and treasure. And when it comes to financial planning, we talk a lot about treasure, and it's finite. You only have what you have. And when I talk with clients and they are in a pre-retirement phase, they oftentimes have the most money they've ever had in their life, or they sold a business, or they inherited funds from the passing of a relative. And when that happens, it looks like it's a lot, but it's not. It's always finite, always. You think about it. Do you have any guess how much Mike Tyson made in his career at the height of his powers?
Oh, I would say, well, it was a little bit of time ago, but I'd say it's over $100 million.
Yeah, it was $300 million. And yet, starting in 1998, 99, he reported that he was actually having financial troubles. And then in the 2000s, went bankrupt. Yeah. So I don't care if you come to me with $300 million to invest or plan for, or if you come to me with $30,000 inheritance to allocate towards some goals. We can burn through money through consumerism because it's out there. The possibilities are out there. So I want to talk about that consumerism is a direct threat. And consumerism isn't that Husqvarna lawnmower. Consumerism is inside your brain. It doesn't exist outside of your brain. It is your attitude to that dopamine rush when you buy that $187,000 diamond-studded necklace like Mike Tyson did. That goes away, and that addiction, that drug, wears off. And like my daughter, you need a new toy the next day. And so I'm not against my phone, your lawnmower. I'm against the rationale of how we think and make our decisions based upon that. The other thing that hurts is the fact that what you own owns you. Let me ask you a question, Eric. Are you a pet owner by any chance?
I am.
Tell me more.
Well, I love dogs. So I've got a bull mastiff that is actually in my office currently, snoring. You can't hear him.
Really?
But yeah, he's my pal. He does what I do. He likes to be with me all the time. And he's a great dog.
Yeah. Wow. Bull mastiff. If you're not driving your car, you need to Google bull mastiff. And then I want you to also Google Maltese, which is what I have. A little embarrassed to admit it, but we have a Maltese. And she's probably about 2.5 pounds right now. And yours is probably about, how heavy is yours, you said?
Oh, he's only 100 pounds. But Maltese, if I'm not mistaken, that's Latin for snack.
Exactly. So you got it. But here's the thing. The joke is not on my Maltese or your bull mastiff. The joke's on us. And here's what I mean. There are 89 million dogs in the United States of America, pets. Okay. 89 million. Do you know how many wolves there are? There's only 17,000 wolves. The reason there's so many dogs is because they domesticated humans some time ago.
Good point.
Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Right now, your dog, it's probably pretty cold where you are. Oftentimes here in Central Florida, it's hot where I am. And our dogs are climate controlled. And when we take them for a walk, we all know what we have in our pocket. We have a bag, and we all know what that bag is for. So I'm sitting here in front of a fancy computer. I got all this podcast equipment. I have a phone system. I'm just looking around here. I've got some nice pictures on the wall. Hey, you know what? I don't own any of this. It owns me.
Yeah.
It owns me. And my car, your minivan, my car, I like to think, hey, I own it. No, really, I'm kind of leasing it. Everything's being leased. My home, everything. And once you understand that impermanence, that rust and moth destroy, then you realize, what in the world am I doing? And not only that, but look what I have trapped myself with. And so that's a huge deal. And if we can wake up to that, we'll understand. And one last thing I'll say is the problem I have with consumerism is it tends to lead to debt. And many, many folks who do what I do would agree that debt is oftentimes one of the most stress-inducing things for your financial life. And also, too, even more than stress producing, it can also have negative consequences, which I'm not going to go into right now. But consumerism is oftentimes that attitude, that mentality is what leads us to find ourselves upside down, owning things that really own us and owing on things that own us. Can you see the problem there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, perfect point. The minivan was years ago. It's gone by now. But for those 3 years that I had that, could we afford it? Unfortunately, yeah, we blew our budget a little bit, what we wanted to spend on a minivan or any vehicle. And so that really stunk because, of course, we had the emotions that drove our decision. But what that did is it didn't put us into tremendous debt, but it didn't allow me to use those funds for something else that would have been more either profitable for me in the long run, maybe investing it, or paying down any other debts that I did have, or not having to use a credit card for something because I would have had that cash reserve instead of putting it into that minivan. So even though it may not put you into debt immediately, it can definitely affect your ability to do any saving for the future or any true planning. To me, debt is a cancer, right? I mean, that's what it seems to me. And it's very, very hard to get rid of for a lot of people. And consumerism can be in that same way. So what is the cure for that cancer?
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm going to restate that to say that consumerism is the asbestos that feeds the cancer of debt. You know, consumerism is whatever cancer eats. That's what consumerism is. And you're right. Debt is that tumor on your life that is just slowly and quietly eating away at your financial victory. Yeah, very good. And I can tell you've got passion behind that. And I know I do too. And it's something that we have to always be vigilant about, and we have to be excited about, and we have to realize that at the bottom of all this, that's where I really wanted to get. I talk about, financial landmines. I talk about your brain. I talk about consumerism. And at the very core of it, or maybe at the very pinnacle of it, what we're trying to figure out is how can we not get into debt? And you mentioned something else real quick I want to go over just briefly, and that is opportunity cost. When you sink your money into buying a Maltese like I have, that's a certain amount of money that can't go towards my daughter's college fund. That's a certain amount. Now you gotta ask yourself, okay, her having a dog now and learning that responsibility and that love, unconditional love, and so forth, is it worth her not having as much money for art history major or whatever it is that she decides to do? And you have to look at those not with that emotional, oh, puppies are cute. You have to look at it with that, I'm going to think this through and I'm going to do the right thing. And obviously that is that circle. Now, you asked me earlier, and I'm not avoiding the question, what's the cure for this? Yeah.
Dr. Ray, give it to us. What's the cure?
All right. Well, a couple things I'd say. Number one is I would say surround yourself with good people. And what that means is getting rid of the bad people. Okay. So who are the bad people?
Car salesmen. No, not car salesmen. Okay, sorry. I'm going to get off that topic. Who are the bad people?
Right. Unsubscribe from Amazon Prime. What I would say is this, in all seriousness, consider the Joneses. That saying, keeping up with the Joneses.
Mm-hmm.
If you're worried about keeping up with the Joneses, whoever the Joneses are for you, you got to get them out of your life. Most likely, they're just your friends and family members. They're just your colleagues at work. It's not their fault. They're not the bad people.
Mm-hmm.
It's that esteem issue that you have around this conspicuous consumption.
Yeah.
And then what you got to do is you've got to surround yourself with those people, the good people who realize what's important to you and what's really important versus what is just right here and right now. That may be changing your friends. That may be changing who you associate with. I want you to sincerely think about that. But what I also mean when I say surround yourself with good people is surround yourself with a multitude of counselors. A wise man once said, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. Mm-hmm. I kind of think of them like accountability partners, and we're all in DA, CA, Consumerism Anonymous.
Yeah.
And as an accountability partner, who should you have? I would recommend you have a good, solid, proactive CPA. Or a tax person. It could be an enrolled agent, could be a CPA. And the reason for that is because they'll be able to hold you accountable to what you've done. And then I think you should obviously talk to a good financial planner, because a financial planner is going to talk to you about what you've done and about what you're going to do and how you're going to plan for the future and explain to you, hey, here's what spending money on this really costs you.
Yeah.
Because not only is it going to, cost you that you got to put gas in that minivan, but that money is also going to be losing because of the interest that we're not able to put towards this particular type of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a very simplistic way of why you should surround yourself with a team, a multitude of counselors that are on that same page. And then also, too, a successful mentor. This is a huge deal. If you can find somebody who is successful and wise that you can see in your people group, talk with them about it, because the problem with consumerism and the problem with debt and the problem with that lifestyle chase is that it really just festers in secret. Well, if you can not talk about it, it really gets to grow. And then also you'll learn from that is from all those people is gratitude for what you've already had and what you've already accomplished. Oftentimes the reason that we get sucked into consumerism, myself too, is because I don't want to be that guy who's driving the 2 TV minivan. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, for shame.
For shame. Right. And then you stop and say, wait a minute, is that important? Well, what is important? What's really cool is I got a beautiful family to fill that minivan.
Exactly.
And then you look at it and you're like, what am I chasing? And I can confess, my thing is watches. For a while there, I was spending really silly money on watches. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. It was interesting. And then it dawned on me that really I was trying to up my game to be impressive to people I don't really necessarily have to impress. Mm-hmm. And I have a buddy of mine who's and he's probably listened to this now. He's had so many nice watches that he's kind of over it. Yeah. And I thought about it and I'm like, wow, at the Zen Buddha mountaintop experience of watch collecting is you don't care anymore. So, hey, how about we just skip all of the consumerism and get to what's really important, which is enjoying what you've got.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about in the last episode where we talked about how we should be on a war footing, one of the key things I talked about is also finding your why. Mm-hmm. And if you have a why, if you have a big dream, if you have a big goal, then it makes everything else right now make a lot of sense. Dostoevsky said, and he's some Russian author guy, an amazing quote, and I really like it because he said, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. And I would kind of I thought so too. I would paraphrase it, and I would say, look, financial planning is not just about counting beans and investing. It's about finding the why. Why are you doing this? And if you know why you're doing this, if you've got that dream, if you've got that big, hairy, audacious goal, then you can drive by Starbucks and have coffee in your coffee mug. And it can be that simple. But you got to have that why. You got to have that dream pulling you forward, because this podcast alone and my witty prose isn't going to do it. It's got to come from the inside.
Absolutely. And that's working with a lot of people over the years as a coach and a consultant. I've always used the term an emotional anchor, right? When you have your why, and you put it best, you've got a beautiful daughter, correct?
Right.
that you could have in that minivan, and you could be taking her to just a simple ice cream shop just to get a scoop of ice cream and just spend that time. It doesn't matter what the van had in it. She was in it, right? It doesn't matter, how fast the van goes. It's going to get you to that destination. And to be able to plan and pass by that Starbucks knowing that you're going to put a little bit of money into her college savings, you're going to put a little bit of money toward that dog, and you've got enough left over to get a couple scoops of ice cream for the two of you to share. That's what it's all about. So find those emotional anchors and say, this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm going to drive right by that store, that specific things. That's why I'm going to go out and use my lawnmower the way God intended me, which is pushing it. So I don't even have to spend the money on the gym, because if I get an automatic one, then I got to pay for a gym too. So anyway, we could go down all sorts of rabbit holes, but I love it. You're right. Find your why, and everything else will make sense.
Very cool, man.
All right. Ray, you don't have to, but do you want to give us a sneak peek of what that next landmine is going to be?
You betcha. So the next landmine is going to be digging a little bit deeper into how it is that the market works and how it plays on your mind. We're going to go a little bit into your mind, but we're going to also talk about how we react to things like volatility and to a lot of things that are fallacies about how we think about money.
And that goes right back to having a good mentor that you can discuss it with. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks again for your time, Ray.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. And thank you all for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Ray Descalso. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Ray comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. This is a great one to share because it'll start discussions, right? It'll start discussions with your friends, with your family, and you may find other people that are saying, you know what, I didn't want that minivan either. And I never wanted that stupid thing. And maybe you guys can partner up and kind of hold each other accountable to reach the true dream of the true why that you've found for yourself. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Privada Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Hosted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Privada Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider for any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The following program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole, financial member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Ray Descalso should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Ray Descalso is not providing legal or tax advice. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. The preceding program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content.